Hello, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Welcome to this 55th webinar on the Secret Doctrine. We probably won't have as many today because of all the stuff going on, especially Mother's Day preparations, but we'll just forge ahead. As you well know by now, here we go. So all episodes of this and the Secret Teaching series are also now available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald and the webinar name that you want to bring up. This will be the last of the Secret Doctrine webinars before the SRI conference, which I hope you'll attend. There's going to be some really good stuff. Check it out at 7ray.org/conference, or just 7ray.org and click on the button and check out the offerings. Both BL and I will be presenting in various capacities. So yeah, check it out. I think it's going to be a good one. But we'll be right back on schedule again in June for the next SD webinar and the next Secret Teachings webinar. Okay, last month we were in the old diary leaves. There were events surrounding a breakup in London of the Theosophical Society, which was avoided at the last minute by HPB kind of supernaturally appearing. With this month, the problems don't abate, and this chronicles the first of many attacks on HPB. This becomes a theme for a while now. So could we get a reader for this, please?
The sky was purely blue without the tiniest cloud to indicate the hurricane in preparation for us. So those were joyous days in London and Paris, and HPB and I were in exuberant spirits. On 11th May, 1884, I had my first sitting and examination with Messrs. F.W.H. Myers and J. Herbert Stack. A stenographer reported the questions and answers. The printed report is in the pamphlet of 130 pages, which was issued in December 1884, and which also contains reports of similar examinations by the Committee of Mohini, M. Chatterjee, and 42 documentary appendices. The ground covered by the inquiry was as to the appearance of the phantasms and the living, the projection and the material constitution of the human double, appearances and communications with the same at distances from the physical body, visits to the witnesses from living adepts or mahatmas, apports, paranormal transport of ponderable objects, astral bell sounds, the phenomenal receipt of written documents, the precipitation of Mahatmic writing within closed letters from ordinary correspondence while in transit through the mails, the giving of flowers by an adept's double to a group of observers, etc.
Okay, next up.
Lynn, please.
I think that any candid reader of the report will notice the perfect candor, openness, and evident good faith of the witnesses, and the amplitude of corroboration contained in the documents, which were laid by us before the committee. But to understand our feelings when later on the SPR made its merciless attack upon HPB, our masters, and ourselves, one should try to put oneself in our places. Here we were, laying bare a series of personal experiences which had for us a most private and sacred character, for no possible benefit that could accrue to ourselves, but solely that our testimony might help the cause of the spiritual science and give comfort to other students not yet so favored as ourselves, going before the committee with no prepared case, but answering the questions sprung upon us, and hence putting ourselves at the mercy of those who had none of our enthusiasm, whose policy was to criticize, analyze, and pick flaws in our statements, and who in rendering their final judgment were unsparing of our feelings, skeptical as to our motives, and merciless to a degree.
Okay, next up.
Trudy, can you read that for us, please? Okay, let's go to Vivian. Vivian, can you read that for us, please?
Hello, yes, I will try. Worst of all, they were then incompetent through inexperience of psychical laws, misled by the conclusions of an agent, Dr. Hodgson, whom they sent out to India to verify our statements and collect evidence, and by an utterly incompetent handwriting expert's report, and so put themselves on permanent record as the self-righteous calumniators of a woman, HPB, who had neither done an injury to a living person, nor asked or received any benefit or reward for her services to the world, yet whom they dared to brand as one of the most accomplished, ingenious, and interesting impostors in history. This second report was received by poor HPB at Adyar when she lay apparently on her deathbed, and it nearly killed her. With an agony of pathos, she has written in blue pencil, in the copy that now lies before me, the following: after my death, these phenomena, which are the direct cause of my premature death, will take place better than ever. But whether dead or alive, I will be ever imploring my friends and brothers never to make them public, never to sacrifice their rest, their honor, to satisfy public curiosity, or the empty pretext of science. Never in my life was there so much uncalled for suspicion and contempt lavished upon an innocent woman as I find here in these pages, published by so-called friends. Signed, H.P. Blavatsky.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, so the Dark Brotherhood finally turned their attention on these two, and they really came after them. This was just the beginning. We'll be hearing more about this later. And this is just a few years before the Secret Doctrine, for the publication of the Secret Doctrine. Okay, last month we had just started our study.
Hold it. I just wanted to say, Janet says, couldn't HPB have flown over via a hot air balloon? She said it's past thought from the last session.
It's possible. Yeah, it's a good question. There's absolutely no other comments about it. I suppose so. I don't know how regular those flights were, or the hot air balloons did exist, whether there were passenger flights on them or not. I just don't know. If there were, it certainly would have been from Paris to London and back, would have been one of the primary rides. So it's a good thought. I don't know. It suggests that she didn't come by train because she just she flew in unexpectedly, so yeah, your guess is as good as mine. Okay, so we just had started our study of the HPB's commentary on this new stanza, Stanza VI, verse 1, by taking a look at this footnote, which references the entire stanza, not the verse, not even the comment, but pretty much the entire stanza. So let's start by rereading the footnote, and then we'll pick up where we left off last time. Can we get a reader, please? The middle section always.
Rudy, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. the message is just in front. This stanza is translated from the Chinese text, and the names as the equivalent of the original terms are preserved. The real esoteric nomenclature cannot be given, as it would only confuse the reader. The Brahmanical doctrine has no equivalent to these.
Vash.
Seems in many an aspect to approach the Chinese Kuan Yin, but there is no regular worship of Vach under this name in India, as there is of Kuan Yin in China. No esoteric religion system has ever adopted a female creator, and those women were regarded and treated from the first dawn of popular religions as inferior to man. It is only in China and Egypt that Kuan Yin and Isis were placed on a par with the male gods. Esotericism ignores both sexes. Its highest deity is sexless, as it is formless, neither father nor mother, and its first manifested beings, celestial and terrestrial alike, become only gradually androgynous and finally separate into distinct sexes.
Thank you, Trudy. Any thoughts or questions about this as a whole? Okay, we talked about this, the Chinese text, and this stanza is from the Chinese as opposed to from the Sanskrit, which is kind of interesting. And then we picked up here with no exoteric religious system has ever adopted a female creator, and thus woman was regarded and treated from the first dawn of popular religions as inferior to man. It is only in China and Egypt that Kuan Yin and Isis were placed on a par with the male gods. To this, we might add the Hindu Vash, even though, as she says, she wasn't widely worshipped, but she is in that position of a creator god. Demotion of the feminine role is particularly true in the Western exoteric expressions of all religions, with perhaps Islam, Judaism, and Christianity being the most egregious perpetrators. Next, we come to the true teaching on this subject. Esotericism ignores both sexes. Its highest deity is sexless, as it is formless, neither father nor mother, and its first manifested beings, celestial and terrestrial alike, become only gradually androgynous and finally separate into distinct sexes. Additionally, in esotericism, gender is non-phallic, but is rather a metaphor for spirit and form. Thus, from an esoteric point of view, Vash and Kuan Yin are feminine because they initiate manifestation through sound and light. So you could say, metaphorically, they give birth through the medium of sound and light. Thoughts or questions on anything in this footnote? Anyone? Okay, let's move into the verse, which states, by the power of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge, Kuan Yin, the triple of Kuan Shai Yin, residing in Kuan Yin Tian, Fohat, the breath of their progeny, the son of the suns, having called forth from the lower abyss, the elusive form of Tsian Chang, our universe, and the seven elements. Okay.
All right, we have a comment from Greg. He says, we talked about this, although not directly, when I mentioned how biologically speaking, we are all androgynous until the Y chromosome takes form in men.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that we, yeah, we did cover that idea, you know, how late that that final division into sexuality happens, even physically, how late it happens. So let's go ahead and take a look at the A section of HPB's commentary, which references by the power of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge. That's what this whole section is about. And so could we get a reader, please?
Greg, can you read that, please?
Sure. A, the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge is called the triple of Kuan Shai Yin because in her correlations, metaphysical and cosmical, she is the mother, the wife, and the daughter of the Logos. So as in the later theological translation, she became the Father, Son, and the female Holy Ghost, the Sakti or energy, the essence of the three. Thus, in the esotericism of the Vedantins, Daivi Prakriti, the light manifested through Eswara, the Logos, is at one and at the same time the mother and also the daughter of the Logos or Verbum of Parabrahman. While in that of the Trans-Himalayan teachings, it is in the hierarchy of allegorical and metaphysical theogony. The mother or abstract ideal matter, Muta Prakriti, the root of nature, from metaphysical standpoint, a correlation of Adbhuta, manifested in the Logos, Avalakuita Shvara, and from the purely occult and cosmical Fohat, the son of the sun, the androgynous energy resulting from the light of the Logos, and which manifests in the plane of the objective universe as the hidden as much as the revealed, electricity, which is life.
Okay, quite a mouthful. There's a lot here. Any thoughts off the top?
Trudy's got a question. On the left-hand panel down at the bottom, it says the 7 elements, it refers to the 7 elements. She wants to know, what is the 7th element?
Well, these are, of course, not, we're going to be covering this eventually in detail, but that's all right. We can jump to it for a moment. These are not the elements that appear in the periodical chart of the physicist, right? These are the idea of earth, air, wind, and wind. I went to the band, earth, air, water, and fire. And then with the 5th element being ether, which is just coming into manifestation at this point, because they are directly tied, the revelation is directly tied to the root races. So ether is coming into being known in this Aryan root race, and the 6th and 7th elements are as yet unknown to us, and they will be revealed respectively in the 6th and 7th root races, and they are in their total the composition of all that makes manifestation. Okay, does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
And then Greg says, this is a really cool statement about the creative elements of our original natures.
Yeah, it is a really cool statement. I agree.
And Efrosini says, the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge does not remind the name of the 2nd ray. Love, wisdom.
Yeah, it's actually bigger than that. We'll be getting into it. In fact, we're getting into it right now. So let's just go ahead and do that. So the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge is called the triple of Kuan Shai Yin, because in her correlations, metaphysical and cosmical, she is the mother, the wife, and the daughter of the Logos. Okay, there's an important distinction between Kuan Yin and Kuan Shai Yin, and that's what I wanted to make a point of here. This is not the a second-rate correlation to answer your question directly. So let's take a look at this Theosophical Glossary definition of Kuan Yin as opposed to Kuan Yin. Okay, can we get a reader? I love the statue, by the way.
Robert, can you read that for us, please?
Kuan Yin, equivalent to the Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara, both being the seventh cosmic principle. Mystically, the cosmic logos or word, and in common with all the logoi, referred to as a cosmic dragon of wisdom, the first universal monarch or cosmic Dayan Chohans. Kuan Yin is often confused with Kuan Yin, the Chinese goddess of compassion, the feminine logos and counterpart of Kuan Yin. But Kuan Yin, or the universally manifested voice, is active, male, and must not be confounded with Kuan Yin, or Buddhi, the spiritual soul, the sixth principle, and the vehicle of its Lord. It is Kuan Yin that is the female principle, or the manifested passive, manifesting itself to every creature in the universe in order to deliver all men from the consequences of sin. While Kuan Yin, the son identical with his father, is the absolute activity, hence, having no direct relation to objects of sense, is passive. The Mahatma letters to A.P. Sinha. Kuan Yin, the voice or logos, is the germ point of manifested activity. Hence, in the phraseology of the Christian Kabbalists, the son of the father and mother, and agreeably to ours, the self manifested in self, Yi-Sin, the one form of existence, the child of Dharmakaya, the universally diffused essence, both male and female.
Okay, so Kuan Yin is the first singularity. It's Avalokiteshvara in Buddhism, and it's Oiaohu the younger, which we've talked about a lot. It's basically the one, but before this being, all was no number. That is to say, there was the unformed, literally, first logos, which is pervasive spirit being, and the feminine Mula Prakriti, which is the shining garment of spirit, right? And from those two coming together through Fohat's first great act of bringing those together, this being came forth, right? Kuan Yin. And he became the creator God, which then emanated through seven gods specifically. It's also Brahman, Brahma, that is to say, and Prajapati. There's many other names. In fact, there are names in every major religion. There's some form for this being that we're looking at here. I love the elongated torso. Look, if this person stood up, look how long this torso is. This is a beautifully proportioned. But notice that, as this male form, again, just because it's spirit, no breasts, right? It's whereas the Kuan Yin is represented as very definitely a feminine being. Okay, any other questions about this?
Yeah, Lynn says this statue is in the Kansas City Museum, and it's amazing.
Oh, wow, really, Lynn? How incredible. Yeah, I was looking at this background. At first, I just thought it was the pattern of the marble, but then if you look, you can see figures, and so it must be a beautiful thing. It'd be next time you're in Kansas City, huh? All right. Okay, the other important statement here is Kuan Yin is in this section. Kuan Yin is the mother, the wife, and the daughter of the Logos. So how is this possible? As stated earlier, gender is a metaphor for the spirit and form aspects. The relationship is determined by the particular aspect of Kuan Yin or Vash under consideration. It's really revealed right here in this phrase here, the Father, Son, the female Holy Ghost, the Shakti or energy, the essence of the three. So this essence, which is called Shakti, pervades whatever role this being is playing, you know, whether it be wife, daughter, or mother, right? It's the same energy, the same Shakti energy. And in a couple of pages, HPB tells us that Vash manifests through 4 aspects, Vash being the word, right? The word, that feminine being, because she is manifesting through the word. She is the word itself, right? The highest Vash is called Para, the latent verbum, who is one with Parabrahm. That's the very highest aspects, right? This is the mother of the Logos. The second aspect, called Pasyanti, is the verbum on the plane of the Logos itself, and thus can metaphorically be seen as his wife. The third aspect, called Madhyama, is the light, sound, and number that actually issues from the Logos and is thus the daughter of the Logos. There's also a 4th level of Vash called Vaikari, which is the sound and speech comprehensible through our senses. And yet it's all the same Vash, demonstrating on all 4 levels simultaneously. Said another way, it is the level of perception of the cognizer that determines the aspect of Vash being experienced, not any change in that being itself. Does that make sense? Any thoughts or questions? Okay, next. Just as in the later theological translations, she became the Father, Son, and female Holy Ghost, the Shakti or energy, the essence of the three. She becomes the Father because, quote unquote, later theological translations, such as the Christian Bible, portrayed the Father in its form aspect. So if it's form, it's feminine, right, from the Nestoric point of view. The Holy Ghost, as the energetic essence of the three, reveals their true unity, as in, I and my Father are one, right? Any thoughts or questions about this idea? Okay, next up, thus in the esotericism of the Vedantins, Naivi Prakriti, the light manifested through Eshvara, which is the same as Ishvara, the Logos, is at one and the same time the mother and also the daughter of the Logos or verbum of Parabrahman. Hopefully this statement makes more sense now. The cosmic soul, the numinal energy that becomes the light of the Logos, initially births that Logos, then flows through and is stepped down by him to become his daughter. The second footnote, by the way, just cites the source of Subaru's first lecture on the subject. Next up, while in that of the Transamayan teachings, it is in the hierarchy of allegorical and metaphysical theogony, the mother or abstract ideal matter, mula prakriti, the root of nature, from the metaphysical standpoint, a correlation of adibhuta, manifested in the Logos Avalokiteshvara. Here, HPB translates the Hindu Vash and Chinese Kuan Yin into the theosophical mother or mula prakriti, describing her as abstract ideal matter and the root of nature, literally Mother Nature. She then introduces the Buddhist equivalences, Adibhuta and Avalokiteshvara. On page 71 of the Secret Doctrine, HPB says, "It is Oya Ohu the Younger, whom thou knowest now as Kuan Shai Yin." On page 72, she says, quote, "Kuan Shai Yin is identical with and an equivalent of the Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara." Finally, and from the purely occult and cosmical Fohad, the son of the suns, the androgynous energy resulting from this light of the Logos, and which manifests in the plane of the objective universe as the hidden, as much as the revealed electricity, which is life. Here, HPB reveals that the Madhyama, or third aspect of Vash, births Fohat, the light of the Logos, which in turn unites spirit and matter, thus allowing life to demonstrate through the form aspect. So in a sense, it's all Fohatic. There's only Fohat from the point of view of the energy that unites spirit and matter. Therefore, Fohat is the agency by which all manifestation comes into being, and that's made into various forms, such as Kuan Yin and Vash, in order to specifically delineate the quality of their particular agency. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Francis, Greg had his hand up while you were talking. He put it down. Greg, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I guess I was thinking about this whole thing that you guys were relating to the serpent energy. And at the same time, I also go back to my shamanic astrology teaching and realize that there is the Ophiuchus, and which is the constellation that is between Libra and Libra and Scorpio. And that this energy of Ophiuchus is also representative or similar to what you guys are talking about. And there's even a Kundalini element. And when the Ouroboros, in which the how all existence emerges out of the Ouroboros, which becomes the unity of matter and spirit, then we get into something else. But it's all kind of relating back to that, because that one constellation, Ophiuchus, is, I was just looking it up on the internet, it's actually between Libra and Scorpio in the sky, and it's and then the other part of it is that Ophiuchus means serpent. So
Okay. Yeah, serpent energy is Fohat. You know, it's if you're going to find the most appropriate metaphor for Fohat in terms of giving it a form aspect, because it's formless, it's electricity, is the serpent energy, right? So you see it in all over the place in Egyptian stuff, from the Uraeus to Apophis, and the dragons also represent this type of energy in manifestation, and that constellation is quite interesting. Ophiuchus, is that as Ophiuchus, which is it's Hercules holding, or some being holding, this serpent energy, and it's interesting, that position between the place of perfect balance and the sign that stands beyond that in Scorpio, which is this sign of the initiate. There's a lot more could be said about that, but that's serpent energy and Fohat are very much connected. All right.
And then Efrosini asks, did the Holy Spirit take the place of the husband in the Trinity? We have a father and a son, but no husband.
It took the place of the mother, which is the esoterically is the Shakti, or the pervading sound, the Vash element, which pervades all creation, which, as I was just saying, is really Phohatic. So yeah, the Holy Ghost, as they call it, it's a ghost because they don't want to give the feminine its due, is the feminine principle. It's not Mary, because Mary is the physical gateway for the cosmic to come into, physical life. But it's the feminine principle within the Trinity, very much veiled. Anyone else?
No, hold on. Mary says, so Kuan Sha Yin comes before the 7 rays, not related to any particular ray.
It's the source of all 7. It's the one who becomes the 7. It's the first one, capital O, right? Before that, it's pure spirit and the veil of matter, which is called Mula Prakriti, that you could say coalesce or take form as the one. This was in the 4th stanza. It was all about this coming into the oneness, right? No number becomes the one number, right? And then all number issues from that, starting with the 7 great streams of energy. Yeah. Now, and then you have from that, you have this soul aspect of Kuan Sha Yin, which is called in theosophy the 6th principle, as opposed to the 7th, the highest, which is the form aspect of that highest principle. Again, that giving the form for the sound to issue forth, the Vash, also Kuan Yin, right? Anyone else? So you got,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Greg says 1, 2, and 3 rays.
No, not really. It's more primordial than that. You have from the 3rd logos, which is that 3rd stage of evolution. First, there's the formless spirit, then the form aspect in its primordial, non-material aspect, the mother, combined to create the one, which contains all rays. That's the 3rd stage of evolution, right? And so those are, and then from that, it says in the old commentary, it says the 4 takes to itself 3. And so you could see then it moving into the realm of the diversity of energies, starting with the 3, right? Starting with the 3, which then become the 7, right? So, yeah. Good question.
And then Robert says cosmic fire clarifies some of this. Do you know yet when you were starting that seminar?
After the conference, I'm going to take a deep breath, pull up the material, see where Michael left off. And the difference, my approach and Michael had enough esoteric knowledge just to wing it. I mean, he could just speak extemporaneously. I do that on most DK material. I have 2 classes a week that I do that with, but I won't do that with TCF. I'll do advanced study of his commentary and of other commentary, and then that's going to be my approach. So there'll be more akin to these, but without the visuals. I mean, what visuals are you going to bring to a treatise on cosmic fire? So, but yeah, that will start very soon after probably probably in June sometime, that we'll kick off a restart, I should say, in a whole new form, that study group. And I'm glad you're interested in it. It'd be great to have you there. Might just be you and me, but hey, Robert, that'll be all right.
And you already have a fan base. So, and Veronica and Mary and Robert, and I'm sure many, many more are excited about you starting the Cosmic Fire or resuming it or whatever.
Yeah. I won't start at the beginning. I think, anybody who wants to start at the beginning, listen to Michael's webinars on the subject. They were live webinars. You can find them on makara.us, and listen to them up through where we will start, and I'll pick up where Michael left off. I don't pretend in any way to bring to this what Michael could, but I think it's valuable for us to continue as a group to explore this material. It's among the most important of all of DK's teaching. So we'll give it a shot. Okay, any thoughts or questions about this paragraph? All right, let's look at the footnote referenced by the phrase up here on cosmic Fohat, and from the purely occult and cosmical Fohat. Can we get a reader, please?
Ann Peterson, can you read that for us, please? Well, I don't see that she, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Say the lecturer on page 306. Evolution is commenced by the intellectual energy of the Logos, not merely on account of the potentialities locked up in Mula Prakriti. This light of the Logos is the link between objective matter and the subjective thought of Esvara or Logos. It is called in several Buddhist books Fohat. It is the one instrument with which the Logos works.
Okay, footnote makes an important point. The quote unquote intellectual energies of the Logos, which are called in theosophy Mahat, demonstrate through Fohat. That is, Fohat, you could say, carries that consciousness aspect and unites them with the form aspect, thus linking objective matter and subjective thought on the cosmic physical plane. Also important here is the statement that Fohat is the sole instrument of the Logos, suggesting that the 7 levels of Fohatic expression, sometimes called the brothers Fohat, represent the sum total of all energies used during manifestation. Often they're personified, as we've seen, with Vash, Kuan Yin. These are personifications of this energy, right? But ultimately, they're all Fohatic in nature. Okay, thoughts about this? Yeah.
Robert wants to know who is the lecturer referred to here.
Oh, it's going to be T. Subaro's Bhagavad Gita, I'm pretty sure. Let's see, we had it in the previous slide here. Theosophists from the Bhagavad Gita, which was, oh gosh, it was either AP Senate or Subaru. I think it was Subaru. It was Subaru. I'm remembering now. We've looked at this a couple of times, that excerpts from that lecture. The lecture on page 306. So this is a book, and it's the book on the Bhagavad Gita. You might have remembered it. You might remember it. We've quoted from it before. Anyone else?
F. Rossini's typed in Subaru.
Yeah. Good. Thanks. All right. On to the B section. That was a short little section on that first phrase, which references the second phrase in the verse. Always over here, what's going on here is keyed to what's in bold print over here, right? So it references Kuan Yin, the triple of Kuan Shai Yin, residing in Kuan Yin Tian. Okay, so now we find out about Kuan Yin Tian. Could we get a reader, please?
Sorry, and Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
Kuan Yin Tian means the melodious heaven of sound, the abode of Kuan Yin, or the divine voice. Literally, this voice is a synonym of the verbum, or the word, speech, as the expression of thought. Thus may be traced the connection with the even, the origin of the Hebrew Bath Kol, the daughter of the divine voice, or verbum, or the male and female logos, the heavenly man, or Adam, Kadmon, who is the same time Sephira. The latter was surely anticipated by the Hindu Vach, the goddess of speech or of the word. For Vach, the daughter and the female portion, as is stated of Brahma, one generated by the gods, is in company with Kuan Yin, with Isis, also the daughter, wife, and sister of Osiris, and other goddesses, the female Logos, so to speak, the goddess of the active forces in nature, the word, voice, or sound and speech.
Thoughts or questions? Okay, first up, Kuan Yin Tian means the melodious heaven of sound, the abode of Kuan Yin, or the divine voice, literally. To this definition of Kuan Yin Tian, the Theosophical Glossary adds, quote, Kuan Yin Tian represents the range of action of the logos and of the minor logi on their own planes, reminding us that the term logos means sound, suggesting that the quote unquote range of actions is implemented through sound, right? A lot of metaphors flying around here. You don't get lost with that. It all comes back to the logos, who is the source of the sound, and the sound emanating from the logos, which is the voice or verbum or logos, literally, and that's personified by these various female deities, right? Okay, next. The voice is a synonym of the verbum or the word. Speech as the expression of thought. Just as a word is the audible expression of some inner, active but silent idea, cosmic ideation is translated into action by means of the verbum, who is personified by Vash. You could say it's made specific in terms of manifestation. The cosmic ideation is made specific. Next up. Thus may be traced the connection with and even the origin of the Hebrew Bath Kol, the daughter of the divine voice, or verbum. So let's read about Bath Kol from the Secret Doctrine, Volume 2. Could we get a reader for this, please?
In the Kabbalah, Bath Kol is the daughter of the divine voice, or primordial light, Shekinah. In the Puranas, in Hindu esotericism, Vash, the voice, is the female logos of Brahma, a permutation of Aditi, primordial light. And if Bath Kol in Jewish mysticism is an articulate, preternatural voice from heaven, the revealing to the chosen people, the sacred traditions and laws, it is only because Vash was called before Judaism, the mother of the Vedas, who entered into the rishis and inspired them by her revelations, just as Bath Kol is said to have inspired the prophets of Israel and the Jewish high priests. And both exist to this day in their respective sacred symbologies because of the ancients' associated sound or speech with the ether of space, of which sound is the characteristic. Hence, fire, water, and air are the primordial cosmic trinity. I am, they thought, thy God, more ancient than the moist principle, the light that radiates within darkness, chaos, and the shining word of God, sound, is the son of the deity.
Any thoughts or questions about this? It's kind of cool up here. You see these hands, which represents the voice of God, way back 3rd century stuff. Thoughts?
I just have a question in terms of what we were talking about here in terms, we're looking right here at those first 3 elements, which is fire, water, and air. So there must be an earth element, and maybe the earth element is the 4th aspect, which would be representative by the moisture or the moist principle, the light that radiates within
Well, that would
darkness.
be the water aspect, yeah.
So the earth aspect, it hasn't really come into form yet, or the form aspect isn't really
Not
defined.
described here. That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, it's 2 elements. It's just fire and water. That's spirit and matter, right? And that the moist principle is the ability to relate to the form aspect. In other words, manifestation, right? That's what that's about. Now there's other principles involved, but that's the initial one. Then when the Mahat through Fohat and the anchoring of all this on the mental plane represents the descent into air, Buddhic, and then further into the realm of fire in manifestation. So fire reflected 1 to 5, so to speak, from the primordial into the mental, onto the mental plane. And then and from one point of view, you can call all 3 of those planes earth. The 18 subplanes of the lower physical, you could call earth-like. That is to say, dense from the point of view of the cosmic, right? And then, of course, you have the obvious, which is the dense, the plane called the physical subplane of the cosmic plane. And even beyond that, the densest aspect, one little subplane on the bottom of that plane, right? So, yeah. Anyone else? Okay,
Greg
so-
says thank you.
Yeah, okay. So,
And I wanted to say what this reminds me of is they tell you that the the body is not a principle.
Right, exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's what comes to mind when I think of this.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
Robert,
go ahead.
sorry. Robert says, would you take a shot at explaining this painting?
Oh, God. I didn't look at it enough to say, except the hands represent the voice of God, right? And then I think it looks like, this is almost like the Fool card, where you have the recognition of that which is above, and then the effect of that below. It looks like some kind of disaster scene. Is this like maybe a building that's been destroyed, people dead, heads separating from their bodies, the uprooting. And so this would be, you'd have to, if you really want to know, you'd have to look at the content of what Ezekiel hears. I love it because it's so symbolic. They made no effort back then to create things in perspective, and therefore they actually ended up having a lot more obvious meaning. Sorry, I can't do much better than that. I'll just end by saying go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And then Greg says there's also a fecundity kind of expressed in the muddy, like soil after the three from from left to right.
That there's a muddy kind of soil. Is that what he said?
Well, he says there's a fecundity.
Oh, fecundity. I didn't hear that. Okay.
Kind of expressed in the muddy, like soil.
Okay. Yeah. There's more to this. This is probably a very specific representation of an event that you can find if you look up Ezekiel. I didn't. It seems to be my failing, with this class, is that I don't do, further research into the images, because that's often where the questions come from. I need to start doing that. Okay, Bath Kol is very derivative. This is it's a daughter of the divine voice, but this had way before the whole Jewish mysticism sprang up. This concept existed and had existed for millennia. Okay, next up, or the male and female logos, the heavenly man, or Adam Kadmon, who is at the same time Sephirah. What these all have in common is that they represent the initial or primordial vehicle of a divine ideation seeking manifestation. So the Sephirah, if you remember from the tree of life, are the stations within that tree, which are the 7 below the 3, right? And all of the whole tree is made up of Adam Kadmon, that is the heavenly man, right? Next, the latter was surely anticipated by the Hindu Bash, the goddess of speech, or of the word. The latter here being referring to the Sephirah, who are, quote, the wife, daughter, and mother of the heavenly man, Adam Kadmon. Anticipated here means came before, as in the concept represented by Vash, the voice of God, historically preceded the Jewish Sephirah. That's all that's being said here, right? And by the way, whenever you have this mother, wife, and daughter, then you're talking about the various roles that this essence plays. This essence, which is described as the word, right? In Hinduism, it's called the Shakti, or the Shakti, which is this energy by which the logos works, right? Essentially Phohatic. Next, for Vash, the daughter and the female portion, as is stated of Brahma, one generated by the gods, is, in company with Kuan Yin, with Isis, also the daughter and wife and sister of Osiris, and other goddesses, the female logos, so to speak, the goddess of the active forces in nature, the word, voice, sound, and speech. HPB here reveals the universality of the concept of the word personified, right, by Vash, finally defining it as the goddess of the active forces in nature, the word, voice, or sound, and speech, right? So that's what everything we've been reading about here can be defined by that last statement, right? This Kuan Sha Yin who works through Kuan Yin, right? Or the Oi Aohu, the younger, who works through the 7 rays, can be seen as that expression is the goddess of the active forces in nature, the word, voice, or sound, and speech. Okay? Vash, by whatever name, is the perfect example of the use of the feminine in esotericism, representing, as she does, either the agent of materialization or primordial substance itself. Those are the 2 ways in which the feminine is used in esotericism. Okay. So, when in the feminist movement you hear, well, the god should be a she, well, they're right. If you're talking about the expression of the logos as the sound or word that results in manifestation, then it is very much a she. It's that part of, it's all a metaphor. It's that part of the logos that is demonstrating and therefore results in manifestation.
Greg says that as in the Bible, John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made manifest in the world.
There it is. Yeah, but it's all masculine there in the Bible, right? If you go to esoteric texts, that's understood as a feminine principle. Yeah, because it's birthing, right? It's just, instead of birthing through the womb, it births through sound, the creative element, right? Which is Fohatic. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please?
Lynn?
If Kuan Yin is the melodious voice, so is Vash, the melodious cow who milked forth sustenance and water, the female principle, who yields us nourishment and sustenance as Mother Nature. She is associated in the work of creation with the Prajapati. She is male and female ad libitum, as Eve is with Adam, and she is a form of a deity, the principle higher than ether and Akasha, the synthesis of all the forces in nature. Thus, Vash and Kuan Yin are both the magic potency of occult sound in nature and ether, which voice calls forth Xian Shan, the elusive form of the universe out of chaos and the 7 elements. And that painting, what occurred to me was that it was an earthquake, that previous one. That
Yeah. It could well be. Mm-hmm. And, the sound in an earthquake, could be seen as the voice of God, Interesting. Okay, any thoughts about this before we get into it?
Eleanor says, sound, vibration, the rate of vibration.
Yeah, that's right. But but not like in sound physics on the physical plane. This would be vibration imbued with the intent of the logos for some specific result to occur, right? That's the difference. But definitely conditioned vibration. Okay, first up.
And, oh, sorry, Greg says, Earth registered at between 8 to 10 cycles per second.
Earth?
That's what he says. Greg, please clarify.
They've done different things where the sound carries forth, and the earth, which is a very, very deep
Right.
vibrational frequency, is between 8 and 10 cycles per second or something like that. That's
Okay. Yeah, we call it in this county, we call it the Taos hum. Right there. So there are those that can actually hear what's called the Taos hum. The local town here is Taos, right? An ancient town. And there's evidently it's not the only place. There's a town somewhere up in Canada or on the border of Canada, if I remember right. There's a recent article about it where you're standing in this guy's living room and he records the hum of the earth. So, some people can definitely hear it. Okay, so if Kuan Yin is the melodious voice, so is Vash, the melodious cow who milked forth sustenance and water, the female principle, who yields us nourishment and sustenance as Mother Nature. As in the last sentence of the previous passage, this sentence equates the melodious voice with all the invisible but active forces of nature. The Hindu metaphor for which is Vash as the melodious cow. It's interesting. Vash is even the French word for cow, so, and of course, we all know that in Hinduism, the cow is sacred. And it is almost certainly because it is the personification of this feminine principle called Vash, right? Talk about being in touch, with
Lynn
your-
says, do they Lynn says, do they have anything to do with the David kingdom?
Well, the David kingdom are the intelligent builders of the form. So the David kingdom, working in concert with the energy of Fohat, creates all that is, right? So absolutely. You could say on the highest level that it is the voice or Vash that animates the David kingdom into activity. If you want a blow-by-blow description of this process, read Stanza 2 in the Treatise on Cosmic Fire. It goes about 2 pages long, and it goes right down the line of how they all come into being from the David point of view, right? I used to have it memorized, but those days are long gone. Okay, next. She is associated in the work of creation with the Prajapati. She is male and female ad libitum, as Eve is with Adam. Ad libitum means occurring as often as necessary. The Prajapati are the creators who emanate from logoic unity. Thus, she, as the personification of the word, is the creative agency of the creator gods, a relationship personified in the Bible by Adam and Eve. Next. And she is a form of a deity, the principle higher than ether in Akasha, the synthesis of all the forces in nature. Literally, Mother Nature. Aditi means the celestial mother of every existing form, and at the same time, the synthesis of these forms. In this sense, she pre-exists the Prajapatis and thus pre-exists creation itself, for she personifies the voice that initiates creation. I hope you're starting to get some feel for this. It's complicated a lot of time more by the particular cultural personifications of these forces. But the idea itself, spoken of, seen energetically, is a unified concept through all these different cultural ways of expressing it. Okay, finally, thus Vash and Kuan Yin are both the magic potency of occult sound in nature and ether, which voice calls forth Dzyan Chan, the elusive form of the universe, out of chaos and the seven elements. The idea of calling forth the elusive form of the universe is a very effective description of Vash. Dzyan Chan means the noumenal or primordial universe, the universe that pre-exists the outer universe. In other words, like the blueprint of the universe. As to the seven elements, HPB says, of these four, now this is what I was talking about before. Of these, we'll see how well I did. 4 elements are now fully manifested, while the 5th, ether, is only partially so, as we are hardly in the second half of the 4th round. And consequently, the 5th element will manifest fully only on the 5th round. So she relates them to the rounds. I was relating them to the 5th, to the root races. I would go with what she said here. Yeah, because this is going to be, in other words, there's 7 rounds in a scheme, in our Earth scheme. The entire reality that is this Earth unfolds in 7 rounds, and the elements unfold 1 per round, okay, as opposed to 1 per root race. We might further assume that the 6th and 7th elements will manifest during the 6th and 7th rounds. Any thoughts about this?
Okay.
I'm hearing voices.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is.
Okay, and oh yeah, here we are. This is where I should have gone before.
Are these postage stamps?
Yeah, isn't that cool? I think they're Greek. Maybe Efrosini can tell me if they're Greek. I don't know why I think that, but it doesn't have a, or maybe it's just an illustration because there's no name of the country or anything. I think they definitely should be. But look, see, these values make me think that they're probably really postage stamps. But I don't remember from where I got these. So this is just a repeat of what I just said. Okay, thoughts or questions on anything from this passage? I see Robert's hand.
Yeah. Is it possible to go back to that paragraph that mentions page 306 in the lecturer that was sub row?
Okay, let's see. That's ways back.
Well, it says it right there at the bottom.
There it
on the
is.
Right.
Great. Okay, this is kind of an interesting footnote, I think. See how he's attributed to me saying that evolution is commenced by the intellectual energy of the logos, not merely on account of the potentialities locked up in Mula Prakriti, which is matter. Okay,
Right.
So he was a Vedantin. He's putting a dig against Samkhya, which says Mula Prakriti is the start. And if you look at the Mahatma letters, they say that Mula Prakriti is the one reality. So this argument, and I think Blavatsky and Subarao had a dust up, and he went off on his own and then died at 32 from some weird disease. But this argument about does consciousness precede matter or spirit, or does matter precede spirit is one of the reasons that the Theosophical Society kept fighting with certain groups they would get temporarily ally with, and then they would end up going off on their own because they have that,
Different understanding about this.
different understanding of how it begins. It's a very interesting, for me at least, footnote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say, the general theosophical belief is that the first logos is not conscious the way we think consciousness. The consciousness is awareness of other. It's reflective in its sense. And the first logos is pure beingness, not even beingness, but the pure energy of deity. And then Mula Prakriti is the noumenal potential form aspect. In their connection, which is initiated by Fohat, Fohat carries with it this element of Mahat, which is, you could say, the noumenal aspect or the potential of what eventually manifests as consciousness. That's how I understand it.
Yeah,
So-
the whole thing about, like in the boundless immutable principle which precedes all manifested being, so that's the actual initiating but non-initiating. It gets really, really complicated, but interesting, food for meditation, because then after that comes eventually, the material, even before thought. So have you read that David Regal book on studies in the wisdom tradition?
I've read quotes from it, but
Yeah, that's a very interesting book. But anyway, there's some stuff about this.
okay, interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
DK says, that there are states of being beyond consciousness. Even when he's describing levels of initiation, he says there are states beyond what we call consciousness, right? So a lot of it has to do with the definition of your words. In fact, everything has to do with the definition of your, you have to, in order for the concepts to have particular meaning, all the definitions have to be upfront, like, for instance, the idea of reality, Mula Prakriti. What does he say here? I think that's enough. We got it.
Okay.
Go
Thank
back.
you.
Yeah, you bet.
And I just want to say, while you guys were discussing that, Gregory said it might be dependent on how we describe consciousness, which you were talking about, or matter.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to realize that we tend to think of a consciousness in terms of human consciousness, which in the greater scheme of things is of a very low order. And we tend to think of Mula Prakriti or the feminine principle in terms of matter, but it's not matter. It's the noumenal version of that, which is matter in potential, right? So it's energetic matrix. Even that is not correct, because energy is introduced by Fohat, who then associates spirit and matter. So, you run out of words at a much lower threshold than these realities exist. So you have to just decide, well, for this conversation, this word is going to mean this in order to be able to describe something of this reality, And rarely are the words we use in this context, used in normal English in the same way at all, So you just have to that's why it's difficult, to portray these concepts, I mean, all the time DK says, beyond this, words cannot describe, and he's a pretty good wordsmith, You think, come on, you can do it. But you realize that there's just nothing in our language that can hold what he's trying to portray, It's just, and that's, he keeps it, pretty much in that area between personality and monad, when he's talking about, for the most part, he's aiming at first initiates. So even at a relatively low level of understanding, meaning like one of the higher initiates, it goes beyond language. So you can imagine it's like controlled folly, to to try to describe these high realities. But, it helps because it, if nothing else, it stimulates the intuition. All right, where in the heck are we? Did we go through this? Yeah, I think we did. So, yeah, we did that. So, can we get a reader for, we didn't read this yet, right? All right, yeah, here's where we are, I think. Can we get a reader, please?
Greg, can you read that, please?
Sure. Thus, in Manu Brahma, the Logos also is shown dividing his body into two parts, male and female, and creating in the latter, who is Vash, Viraj, who is himself, or Brahma again. It is in this way a learned Vedantin occultist speaks of that goddess, explaining the reason why Esvara or Brahma is called Verbum or Logos, why in fact it is called Sabda Brahma.
Okay, let's see what the heck he might be talking about here. First, thus in Manu Brahma, the Logos also is shown dividing his body into two parts, male and female, and creating in the latter, who is Vash, Viraj, who is himself, or Brahma again. Okay, so this is the male version of that same being mother, wife, and daughter. This is the male version of that, whereas Vash, which is the feminine, the word again splits, and Viraj emerges, who is Brahma once again, right? So the Father and the Son become one, or said another way, the Son becomes the new Father. All right. There should be a comma after Manu, who is the synthesis. Let's see, where did I put that? Thus in Manu, oh yeah, right here, there should be a comma. Thus in, why didn't I just put it in then? Let's see. Should be a comma after Manu, who is the synthesis as well as the Prajapati or creator of humanity, right? That's Manu. So following the pattern set by the universal and systemic Logos, Manu, quote unquote, divides his body into two parts. Exoterically, this represents noumenal male and female humanity. Esoterically, the human and Deva kingdoms. Brahma is the father aspect, Vash the mother, and Viraj the son or solar aspect, the new father. Any thoughts about this? Next. Oops. What happened? Okay, let's get a reader for Viraj and what this is about. So you see in this little chart here, the Viraj represents, another stepping down, a manifested form of Ishvara. All right. Okay, can we get a reader?
Robert? Yeah. Robert, can you read that?
Yeah. Viraj, Sanskrit, sovereign, splendid. In Hindu mythology, the son of Brahma, who on analogical lines becomes Manu. In the laws of Manu, Brahma divides his body into male. By the way, I think that's where the Manu comma, I think she meant the laws of Manu. Brahma divides his body into male and female parts, and in the female part, Vash creates Viraj, who is also Brahma, the type of all male beings, as Vash is the type of all female beings. Manu declares himself created by Viraj, or Vaishvanara, the spirit of humanity, which means that his monad emanates from the never-resting principle in the beginning of every new cosmic activity. That Logos or universal monad, collective Elohim, that radiates from within himself all those cosmic monads that become the centers of activity, progenitors of the numberless solar systems, as well as of the yet undifferentiated human monads of planetary chains, as well as of every being thereon. A verse in the Rig Veda has Viraj spring from Purusha and Purusha spring from Viraj. Viraj is comparable in some aspects to the Egyptian Horus and equivalent to the third logos.
Okay, this makes, yeah, the idea that it's equivalent to the third logos. It's the first singularity, right? Whereas Ishvara is the pure spirit aspect. So can anybody describe why, we've now looked at this concept for a long time, that Viraj springs from Purusha and Purusha springs from Viraj? Anybody have a sense of that?
I could take a wild guess.
Sure.
In the Veda, they use words very, very poetically, so that, for example, sun could be moon, and they use them equivalently in order to stop the lower mind and create a state of meditative study.
Okay, yeah, it's true. They do that. Okay. Again, if you think of this in terms of polarity, that you have a positive polarity, which is the initiating force, and from it springs the negative polarity, right? And they have that relationship. But then when the negative polarity, when it descends into creation, the negative becomes the new positive polarity, which then, and this is an act of creation again, has a new negative. So you have, for instance, the first logos has with Mula Prakriti, or the second logos, creates that's the positive negative polarity in its writ large, creates a new positive polarity in the third logos, which here is equated to Viraj, right? Well, that becomes then positive in this new paradigm of existence, which starts with the one. That becomes the positive polarity of everything beneath it, of everything it gives birth to, right? But each one of the seven creator gods also creates and becomes its own positive polarity, so that this keeps shifting, right? You have the Purusha, the active force, and the beingness that results from that force, and they keep alternating. Okay. All right. Okay.
Efrosini says, I and the Father are one.
Yeah.
John 10.
Yeah, basically what you're doing there is, in that relationship, you're recognizing the one is containing both the positive and negative poles, right? So you're the negative pole to the positive Father, but that is the sum total, the unity, right? Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely related to what we were just talking about. Okay, next up, it is in this way a learned Vedantin occultist speaks of that goddess, explaining the reason why Eshvara, or Brahma, is called verbum or logos, why in fact it is called Sabda Brahman. Okay, let's take a look at the Theosophical Glossary entry on Sabda Brahman. Can we get a reader, please? And there's a picture of Brahman, one of the oldest that you can find.
Okay, Vivian, I'm going to ask you to read, but first I just want to say, Gregory says that this reminds me of Aristotle's theory on causation synonymy.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, Vivian, please go ahead.
Sabda Brahman, Sanskrit, word Brahman, the soul of Brahman expressing itself through its Akashic veils as the divine logos, or word, or sound, analogous to the active unmanifested logos of the solar system, and closely connected in meaning with the teachings concerning Daivi Prakriti, divine matter or original substance. In later ancient Hindu thought, because Sabda meant word and Brahman was considered to be revealed in the Vedas, Sabda Brahman was often used as a title for the Vedas themselves, as being the revealed word of Brahman, or Brahman expressed in words.
Thank you. And, that gets back to, was it Robert that was talking about the poetic use of these titles, to describe their understanding of reality, like Sabda Brahman, meaning the Vedas themselves, right? Well, it's not a personification, it's a result of the word going forth, literally, right? I think I saw Robert's hand.
Yes. Robert.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to your question about the Purusha and Viraj. In the definition of Viraj springing forth, is the son of Brahma. So he's springing forth there. And Brahma could be considered an ultimate Purusha on a higher level. But then all those other cosmic monads who are springing from Viraj become Purushas on another level.
That's right. That's exactly it.
Okay.
It's a relative, it's a position in relation to manifestation, not an absolute identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to tell you, Francis, that Greg put in a link in there for everyone on the causational synonymy.
Oh, good, great. So don't you love these mustachioed angels here? They're pretty great. Okay. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yes. Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
The explanation I am going to give you will appear thoroughly mystical, but if mystical, it has a tremendous significance when properly understood. Our old writers said that Vash is of 4 kinds, see Rig Veda and the Upanishads. Vaik, Hari, Vash is what we utter. Every kind of Vaikari Vash exists in its Madhyamana, further in its Pasyanti, and ultimately in its para form. The reason why this pranava is called Vash is this, that the 4 principles of the great cosmos correspond to the 4 forms of Vash. Madhya is said of something whose commences and end are unknown, and para means infinite. These expressions all relate to infinitude and to division of time.
Thank you. All right, this paragraph is one long quote from Subaro's, here we are, lecture on the Bhagavad Gita. That's what we were citing before. Okay, first, our old writers said that Vash is of 4 kinds, see Rig Veda and the Upanishads. Vaikari Vash is what we utter. Every kind of Vaikari Vash exists in its Madhyama, further in its Pasyanti, and ultimately in its para form. So just what we were talking about, this idea of Purusha and Viraj alternating, these are alternating as they go up, and yet the same Shakti, the same essence pervades all Vash, right? We already talked about the 4 levels of Vash a minute ago. What I didn't stress is that each more material level of Vash has its being in its higher correspondent level, much like our personalities have their being in our souls, which in turn have their beings in our monads, right? I hope you're, I think we're probably starting to understand this idea. Okay, next, the footnote. Madhyamana is said of something whose commencement and end are unknown, and para means infinite. These expressions all relate to infinitude and to division of time. So, Madhyama Vash, the light, sound, and number that issue from the logos, is ruled by time, even though the cycles that govern these emanations are inconceivably long from the human perspective. On the other hand, the para state of Vash, the source of Madhyama Vash, is like Parabrahma, beyond time. It's in fact an aspect of Parabrahma, right? It's a potential, the potential of the word going forth. Next, the reason why this pranava is called Vash is that the 4 principles of the great cosmos correspond to these 4 forms of Vash. First, let's familiarize ourselves with the concept of pranava. Could we get a reader for these 2 quotes, please?
Okay. I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to try. Pranava, Sanskrit from pra, nu, to utter a droning or humming sound, as during the proper pronunciation of the word om or om. The mystical sacred syllable om or om, pronounced by Brahmins, yogis, and others during meditation. In Vedanta philosophy and the Upanishads, used in another sense. In one sense, pranava represents the macrocosm, and in another sense, the microcosm. The reason why this pranava is called Vash is that these 4 principles of the great cosmos correspond to these 4 forms of Vash: Vaikari, Madhyayama, Pasayanti, Para. These are called the 4 matras of pranava. The fact that this term is given to the mystical sacred symbol and that it signifies a droning or humming sound shows that anciently the word was uttered aloud, although in secret whenever possible. Modern Brahmins, however, are apt to condemn the vocal utterance of their sacred syllable and sometimes assert that it should be uttered in silence, i.e., in the mind. Pranava, like Om, is a mystic term pronounced by the yogis during meditation. Of the terms called, according to exoteric commentators, Vairitis, or Om Bur Bhuva Svar, Om, earth, sky, heaven. Pranava is the most sacred, perhaps. They are pronounced with breath suppressed.
So you can see what a tremendous occult science stands behind this concept of pranava or pranyava. I wonder what that little point under the end, how that changes the pronunciation of the end. We don't know.
I think it makes it pranyava. It's a
Pranyanya.
that's one of those things.
Okay. Yeah, so pranyava. I'm good with that. So it's interesting that there's this sometimes, how can you say this? There's this other awareness of this sound that is going forth even as one speaks the Om or Om, and that ultimately it is a particular sound that is uttered in silence. Yeah.
Francis?
Yeah.
Well, and Veronica, I'll get to your comment in a minute. What this reminds me of, this description here, reminds me of Om Mani Padme Hum, and the fact that when you see the symbol, you see in the outer ring the, those syllables, but in the center, there's another symbol, and it's the Hari, which is a internalized, you say the mantra and then you say that internally in your mind. And that's what they're describing here for, the sacred words. So it's interesting that we see this in multiple contexts.
Yeah.
Although the source for all of it, of course, would be the same.
Right. Ultimately, it is, you could bring it all back to this pranyava, which I think is it's not a specific sound. It's a form of vash that represents the means by which the sacred is gained access to or attained, right? Okay, any other thoughts about this fascinating subject, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Greg says, like the Spanish tilde in manana for the thing on the end. And then Anne Veronica says, isn't this the beginning of the Gayatri? I think you're talking about the Om Bur Bhuva Svar, the Om Earth Sky Heaven, right, Anne Veronica? Well, I'm pretty sure that's, yeah, she said yes.
Okay.
You know, and then Robert's got his hand up.
The phrase, these four principles of the great cosmos, do we know what those four principles are?
I'm not sure what he's referring to here.
In the middle of the page, where it says, the reason why this pranyava is called Vash is this, that these four principles of the great cosmos correspond to these four forms of Vash.
Yeah, and you can easily, make the connection. Since the Vaikari is the spoken word, then you could say that the physical manifest realm would be the fourth principle. And the Madhyama within, if you're talking cosmically, you could layer these in terms of cosmic planes, right? In terms of their source aspect. Within the cosmic physical plane, however, you could put this at Atma Buddhi Manas, right? And then the Pasyanti is the highest form of that which is ruled by time. Para, in every instance, is going to be, the Adi plane or the causal planes in higher cosmic levels. And Pasyanti would be the garment of that, which would be the monad. But that's just I don't know that directly. I'm only extracting it from these four, right? And you could do it by looking up matras, I suppose. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right. See where we are.
Is this a good breaking spot?
It is a good breaking spot. It's an excellent breaking spot. Thanks for that. So folks, I hope to see you at the conference virtually, that is, and hear your comments as a participator. And, I will be presenting, and so will be else. So I hope to see you there. But otherwise, there's no break in these webinars. We'll be right back at it next month. So until then, do you want to give dates for those?
Yes, the next Secret Doctrine is, on the third Sunday like we normally do, June 19th at 7 p.m. And before that, we've got the next Secret Teaching of All Ages, and that's going to be on 5 June at 7 p.m. So to see you all there, we hope to see you all at the conference.
Yes. Have a great Mother's Day, and BL, I hope you have time to stick your dinner in the oven now.
Yeah. Oh, so too, because the kids are coming over and my allergies are absolutely killing me.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. Everybody's saying thank you. And Veronica says some question for the conference. What's your question, Anne Veronica?
We are trying to find one of Francis' presentations in the schedule, and we can't find it. I sent you a question, Francis, in the email box. We can't find what day and date you are so that we can schedule ourselves.
Let's see here real quickly. Since it's about me, it's a very important question. So
I am going to turn the recording off, though.
yeah, go ahead. And so here's the schedule. So first of all, there's the sacred ceremonial for 2 days.